My eyes always light up when I hear the word consensus.
I believe it is a mix of consensus between people that, okay, on this level, we all understand what it is about, and the method you use to get this fact are valid. And from another side, it should be grounded on some verifiable part of reality.
So yeah, Ilda, nice to have you here. Tell in a very simple manner what you do and why I'm so interested to talk with you.
Oh, it might be the most complex question for me to answer what I'm doing. Somehow I got into the philosophy faculty as a student, and I studied logic there. And once I was impressed by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz theory about the calcula universalis, that when you have some argument, some conflict, theoretically you can just formalize your thoughts and thoughts of your opponents and other members of the discussion to calculate your science and to deduce the best decision for it. And I was impressed by this idea, and basically I believe that finally being here in Leibniz University, I am here because of that, and I am continue doing and implementing this idea by knowledge graphs and ontologies and other formal tools.
So a knowledge graph could solve disputes and arguments.
Yes, and there is the whole field of study called argumentation mining, and I'm not sure about the term calculative argument, where people try to extract argument schemes and inferences from the text and formalize them and run some reasoning engines to deduce the decision of the argument. And currently, I'm also diving into this field of study because it is related to my current project, where I try to use formal methods like knowledge graphs to verify scientific contributions. So if an author of a scientific contribution claims that he did something new, some contribution, there also should be an argument scheme why it is so or it is not so.
So if I read two different papers, you eventually would be able to, let's say, calculate the strength of the argument. Like he is just saying something like, oh yeah, climate change isn't real. And the other one says, so we have this and this and this evidence, which concludes that this and this and this, which concludes that this and this and this, which concludes that climate change is real. And then you could say, okay, one of the arguments is backed by 7 layers of statements, and the other one is just none.
I would not say that it is strength of the argument. I would just say that it is. I would like to check if the argument is correct or not correct. So if it is not correct, we can't say that the contribution is valid. So we can't believe that it is true.
So it is binary.
Yes.
So a statement is either correct or incorrect.
Yes.
So we are going back to axioms and fundamental assumptions that we have some ground facts. Our knowledge graph that knows.
Yeah, finally we have to get some basic input data somewhere to start with.
And how do we get them?
I believe it is a mix of, from one side, of consensus between people that, okay, on this level we all understand what it is about, and the method you use to get this fact are valid. And from another side, it should be grounded on some verifiable part of reality. We can do some experiment, and our sensors show that, okay, this building has such and such heat and volume and so on.
My eyes always light up when I hear the word consensus, because it's basically the whole thing this channel this idea, this, let's call it movement, is built around, to try to understand how you could formalize a consensus. I would call this mix of consensus and factual basis rational consensus. I don't know if that term is out there, but basically a consensus that survives fact check. So you have facts and you have a consensus, and neither of the two negate one another.
Yeah, and it is interesting for me because this technology can be scaled to the people society. All of it is very interesting, but unfortunately, I am not a big expert in this domain.
Yeah.
I think it is more related to game theory, economy,
yeah,
maybe information security, but not logics and knowledge representation.
I always like to realize what kind of web we are involved in right now. So you already said you got into philosophy. What is the place where you started from? Where did you do your master and bachelor in?
I studied logics in the philosophy faculties, which was quite mathematical discipline. In my master thesis, I was focused on logical systems for incomplete information context, and there were a lot of information theory, so it was already not exactly logic, because logic is mostly binary, and here you have already some real numbers and so on. And because of that, I decided to switch to computer science, and there I found out that there is knowledge representation domain, semantic technology, where I can apply my logic background.
So that's the thing I mentioned with the incredible web of how everything has to interwork. You already mentioned you were in the field of philosophy, but your subfield was very mathematical. The tree I once made, I know you still not fully agree with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, this is how I see the world as of right now. And the further up it goes, the less I'm sure. Logic seems to be the groundwork of everything. Like math wouldn't work without logic, but math needs logic.
I would say that math and linguistics are about the language with which we describe everything. And logic is what we describe with math, but the object of logic that we describe is relations and structures between abstract objects. So logic also requires math, and math also requires logic, because math is made of abstract objects. So there's kind of interaction.
Yeah. So after all, we can't simply form it as a flow chart and start somewhere and get somewhere. It's more like whenever we add in new pieces, all our prior pieces evolve again and become greater than they were before. For our simple subfield of knowledge or epistemology, we have logic, we have philosophy, we have math, we have linguistic, and in a way to represent it currently, we also have computer science. All those things can easily be required to say, master all of those before you are the best epistemology expert out there. And even then you could go out there and say, yeah, you got how we formalize it, but how do you get it to the people? Then you have to have sociology background as well, then politics. Yeah, but now that we have the logic or the arguments or the truth, how do we communicate it with a broad society? How do we act upon it? And then we are back to ChatGPT and factfulness and truthfulness, accountability, traceability, and
there is a famous quote from Wittgenstein: "The limits of your world are the limits of your language."
Which again is interesting. When we formulate statements, we would write them in language, right?
Yes.
Like we would say tree is nature. So then we would have to define tree and nature. And what exactly does is mean?
Happily for trees, we can just point at them, like the picture behind you.
Yeah.
With nature, it is more complex.
Yeah. Lars used the example of tree and then looked up the Wikipedia definition, which again is formal consensus. Everything on the Wikipedia is formal consensus. If you dispute it, get out there and dispute it and see that your opinion or facts overwhelm the currently presented facts. So in a way, Wikipedia always represents the state of the art of the, let's call it collective consensus. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
So given all this, what actually can be known?